My name is Andrew Duck. I'm a candidate for U.S. Congress in Maryland's 6th Congressional District. I'm a retired military intelligence officer. I spent 20 years in the Army. That includes 3 deployments to Bosnia and time on the ground in Iraq. And I'm here today because I think it's important to protect America's democracy. I spent my life serving this country and protecting democracy. I stood in the Fulda Gap in the 80s when I stood in West Germany and there was an East Germany under Russian oppression. I am not willing to allow our country to fall under that same sort of oppression, and that's part of the reason that I'm running. I mean, I care about a whole host of things. We need to take care of health care. We need to fix our economy. We need to make sure that we fix our environment and address climate change. But we're not going to be able to accomplish all those things if we allow the Russians to meddle in our elections, and I call on everybody who's an American, regardless of party, to stand up to the Russian interference.
And what do you find worrying about, especially with the Facebook, finding out Facebook allowed Russian groups to buy Facebook ads en masse, and we're only finding out about it now?
Well, one of the problems that we have, and I understand that we're going into a new media environment, but as soon as you take an internet site and you monetize it, you have to assume the responsibility for journalistic control over that content. You have to exercise editorial control. And if you don't, then you're irresponsible as a member of the media. And we need to understand that what has happened is part of deliberate Russian doctrine. They have new generation warfare theory. That's the theory that they're applying. We've seen them apply it across the globe. And we've seen them interfering in elections, not just here in the United States, but throughout Europe. And we need to make sure that we track it, we identify exactly how they did it, and that requires a thorough counterintelligence investigation and determine who assisted them. And if Facebook is one of the folks who assisted them, find out whether they did it knowingly or unknowingly and how that was done. I will tell you that the interference that occurred in 2016 is continuing. I have had bots hit my campaign website. So we know that they're continuing to do these activities, and we need to determine exactly how they do it, make a plan to counter it. That's why we have a cyber command, because we need to counter this foreign interference in our elections.
Now, I'll try to ask you some other questions, because Russia seems to, which is good, this is why we're here. We're not putting, people are wearing t-shirts that say, we're not putting up with Putin up with it, which works fantastically. But so you talked about healthcare. Now, a lot of people have signed on to Bernie Sanders' universal healthcare. Are you a supporter of that idea?
I support Medicare for all. Yes, I support Bernie Sanders' plan. We have a healthcare system in our country that's broken. The one piece that works best is Medicare. Everybody knows that Medicare is doing a decent job of taking care of their grandmother and their grandfather. Let's take what works and build on it. That just makes sense. It's practical. You can get fired up about ideology, but let's take things that work and build on them. Well, let me talk about some other issues. I think we need to address economic inequality in this country, and that starts with fighting for a living wage. Fighting for a living wage starts with the fight for 15. We need to get workers who have money in their pockets if we want this economy to grow. If people are working 3 or 4 minimum wage jobs trying to support a family and they still don't have the money to spend, how are we ever going to get economic growth? And the last thing is climate change. Climate change is not something that just threatens our country, it threatens the whole world. We need to take action on that. I have been using my spare time as the director of operations of a small green energy research company called Vertica. We've gotten 2 patents on conductive polymer technology that should be useful not just in solar panels but also in energy storage, because once we get switched to renewables, energy storage is our next challenge. It is that sort of science-based, fact-based research that we need to do to find the solutions that will help us draw down the carbon that's already in the atmosphere, and that's really where we need to go. So then we can't accomplish any of those things if we have the Russians meddling in our elections.
And the one more thing in the news right now is the Dreamers. Pelosi and Schumer have made a deal, supposedly or possibly a deal, maybe not a deal, back with Trump. And how do you feel about what's your stance on the Dreamers, and also how do you feel about working with Trump as?
First of all, well, let me address those in reverse order. I think we need to talk to everybody. One of the biggest problems we have in this country is that we've become so polarized and so divided. People on the left don't talk to people on the right. The worst thing you can do if you're a true progressive is take everybody who's giving you conservative, alt-right comments and say, I'll never talk to them again. We need to talk to these people, because if we don't, they stay stuck in that. So I would be willing to work with anybody, even somebody like Trump, who I disagree with on most of his issues. I can't say all of them, because he's usually taken both sides on every issue. On DACA specifically, we should not be punishing children who have done nothing wrong. These are people who were brought to this country. They did not make a conscious choice to do so. They were brought by others. They should not be punished when they did not do anything wrong. That's number one. Number two, we should not allow the political establishment in Washington to take something that's established policy and then hold it hostage and ask for something just to keep the status quo. Okay, I don't believe in hostage taking. I would not exchange the wall is part of the deal. The wall is wrong. I'm not opposed to improved border security. We want to do everything we can to keep illegal drugs from coming into this country. That's a smart thing to do. We can talk about doing right things together with other right things, but we don't want to have a situation where the politicians are holding hostage a group of innocent children in exchange for getting what they want. So I'm willing to work with Trump, but as I said, we need to combine right things with other right things, and that's how we compromise.